way forward. And before we start, I would like to request my colleague, Manish Bhai, to please launch a special issue of South Asia Disasters.tech on harnessing collective knowledge, advancing adaptation research and action through tracking, learning, and sharing around extreme heat. Manish Bhai, if you could please paste the link in the chat box. Thank you. And now I would like to invite our first speaker for the day, Ms. Prerna Singh, Program Director, Climate Adaptation Learning Lab from Transitions Research India. Her work focuses on adaptation and resilience research, monitoring and evaluation, and multi-stakeholder collaborations. She has worked extensively in the space of climate resilience and uncertainty and bridging the gap between engineering and community resilience. And she'll be sharing her experiences on adapting to extreme heat, some stories, strategies, and shared learning. Over to you, Prerna Singh.
Thank you so much, Mehalji. If you can tell if you can hear me, and I'm just sharing my slide. If you can see the presentation.
Yes, we can
in
see.
Presentation mode.
Yes. Yes, we can.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me for today's, for having this very relevant and timely conversation, and also for taking the initiative from the TLS learning journey and bringing us together to form this this very valuable resource of information of knowledge. And to everyone else who I haven't had the chance to meet yet, hello, I'm Prerna Singh. I lead the Climate Adaptation Learning Lab at Transitions Research. And Transitions Research also leads the Tracking, Learning and Sharing activity program for the Adaptation Research Alliance, which is where the momentum on this particular idea came up. And I'm going to share some insights on reflections from that peer learning process and the community action that we experienced. And I think this is not, like, everyone here knows that the extreme heat is a lived reality. It's not a future risk. We have been seeing it on a daily basis, but we also are seeing communities adapting very well to it. They're doing it creatively, effectively, but often invisibly. There are solutions, but they are undervalued and they're underdocumented in policy spaces. So this is where we came in and why we did the TLS Heat Adaptation Learning Journey. And just for context, the Adaptation Research Alliance is an alliance of about 250 or 270 members now across Global South and Global North, working on climate adaptation as researchers, policymakers, NGOs, funders. And they're doing, and many of us, of you are here, they're doing great work. So we are trying to gather that evidence, capture that knowledge, and also identify challenges that they're facing and to see if there is peer learning that we can facilitate. And as part of that, we every cycle of these learning journeys, we identify what are the top learning priorities. And heat adaptation came up as one, especially during 2023-2024 cycle of TLS. And it was identified that there are gaps in documenting and visibility of grassroots adaptation response to heat. So we went ahead to solve the challenge. And what emerged was a heat solutions compendium, a community-driven heat solutions compendium, which will be public soon. It captured 50 plus real-world strategies spanning from infrastructure solutions, school roofs, to behavioral changes at the individual level, at the community level. And these are some examples, and many of these solutions are coming from contributors to this issue today that we are releasing. But there are so many other solutions and efforts ongoing in this work. And I think this issue that AIDMI has taken the lead on is a great step in bringing that evidence together. The process itself of the learning journey of figuring this piece out gave us a lot of crucial insights in the way of it. And the first of it and the most relevant to me is that peer learning surfaces a lot more nuance than desk research. We did a lot of desk research on what solutions exist, people are doing, but we also realized that there are lived realities and silent pieces of work that many of you are doing, that you have done the work, you have this great resource, and then you move on to do other important work, and there is a lot less bandwidth to put it out, to create a report out of it, to put it to the broader community. So a lot of this great work goes unnoticed, and facilitating peer exchanges and peer learning opportunities helps discover and bring forth this information. We also realize that just getting people in the room is not going to do it. We have to establish trusted relationships to enable deep sharing, that people are comfortable in sharing their solutions, the ones that are not yet published, and not have to worry about intellectual property. And what we observed that, given that the space we are in, that a lot of it was organically there, where people were very happy to share knowledge and build other members' capacity. At the same time, follow-ups and check-ins and conversations outside of that one workshop really helped build the trust and retain that trust subsequently. And I would say, once again, credit to AIDMI to bring a lot of the participants of the last year's TLS back through this issue to come together and see that their work is getting further noticed and further valued and pushed in different directions and utilized. We also realize that there is a lot of, we talk about climate adaptation being extremely contextual, but at the same time, we have identified the value of local to local exchange that in nature will not happen. And it could shape real-time adaptation, where we had experts from Myanmar and their insights in housing heat adaptation integrated into our experts from Bangladesh and how their cooling solutions are happening. And we found common synergies through facilitating that conversation, which often in the context of adaptation being very, very locally contextual, we don't have these conversations, but there is a lot of value in finding aspects that work across regions, across contexts, so we can build on each other's work and be more efficient, as we know that heat and climate change is a very urgent issue. Now, what we want to do next, and we want to continue this engagement with all of you here and all of your peers, and just expand this network of experts and interested stakeholders to transform these emerging tools like this issue, like the solutions compendium that we'll share, into an ecosystem of shared knowledge. A single guidebook will not capture what's working. Even the 50 plus solutions, since then, I have had conversations with people where new solutions have emerged, and there's a whole lot of information coming up. So our objective is now to build a dynamic, collaborative, ongoing space for, in this case, heat adaptation, extreme heat adaptation solutions. And we are hoping to envision a resource that's also low-tech in a way that everyone can access it, everyone can contribute to it, and it doesn't require a new skill to learn, to contribute to, and to share your knowledge in this, or to use it and identify people to work with. So how do we connect it to the local actors? And also, how do we give them the ownership and agency that this is their work and their work is recognized? So I would, with that, I would leave it asking, like making a call for joining for all of you to join this collective journey. One, we will share our current compendium very soon, but I'm sure you have a whole lot of wealth of knowledge in this subject beyond what we have synthesized. So I request if you can reach out to us, and we'll share more efficient ways of doing this. But I want to emphasize that all of your stories matter, and your approaches have a lot of insight, and we have seen real impact of it for people taking these solutions, improving their versions because of these insights. So we invite you to collaborate, exchange, and take some of these pieces back. And then let us know. I think generating evidence of our work is so important to eventually facilitate funding challenges that adaptation space has, where evidence gap is pretty much always stated as the reason. So let's try to resolve that problem. So there is no excuse to not have funding in adaptation, right? And this is right now to me a low hanging fruit because we have that all of this knowledge and all of these pieces of the puzzle with us. So with that, I will hand it over back to Mehulji. And once again, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the other conversations today and the issue.
So thank you so much, Prerna ji. I think the key message we can take home from your presentation is that extreme heat is a reality, and those who are affected by extreme heat have already started figuring out what can be done in terms of adapting to it and addressing the challenge of rising temperatures. And I think by capturing innovations and solutions, putting them together is extremely important. And that is exactly what you are doing. And that is very useful. So thank you for that. And we look forward to reviewing some of the documents that you are putting together. And we look forward to learning more about what you are discovering from research and evaluations. So thank you so much, Prerna ji. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Devyanshi Vyas, Urban and Environmental Planner, Indian Institute for Human Settlements, Madhya Pradesh, India. Currently, she is working with IIHS and she evaluates heat adaptation actions in Indian cities and contributes to sustainable human settlement assessment in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. So she will be speaking about insights from India's urban heat action plans. So welcome. Over to you, Ms. Divyanshi Vyas.
Thank you, Mehulji. Hello, everyone. I'm Divyanshi. I work with School of Environment and Sustainability at IIHS Bangalore. As told, my work revolves around climate adaptation, urban resilience, and mostly governance of heat management. I've been closely working around analyzing heat action plans across Indian cities to understand how they're evolving, what needs to be make them more effective and equitable. I would also like to thank AIDMI for inviting me to this roundtable and very honored to be part of the collective effort of advancing adaptation research. I'll share my short presentation that I have now. Let me know if it is visible.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So basically, we have been studying a lot of heat action plans that are there, but this recent research that we came out with is focused on the city level heat action plans. And I'll be also presenting some anecdotes around heat from the field work that our team is engaged in around different projects. I know, like Prerna said, we don't have to establish it anymore that South Asian cities are already reeling under severe heat waves, and India especially is vulnerable with a large exposed population and growing cities. Within India, we have over 100 heat action plans at different scales. Around 35 of those were accessible while we were doing this study, and specifically 10 were focusing on city scale and work. So that is what we have focused on. We started with mapping out a timeline of major Indian heat waves, and you can see how there was a sharp increase suddenly around 2000s, and the frequency and the impact was also increasing on the exposed population. And in turn, there were certain actions that were taken at city scale. Then NDMA came up with the national guidelines to how to actually prepare these heat action plans. And that is where we started seeing after 2015 a lot of heat action plan till now. And there has been a lot of efforts by states, I would say at this point, that over 8 states have now declared heat as a disaster, and there is some kind of funding that is now getting directed towards these heat actions. Apart from that, we are also seeing a lot of research around exposed population and how heat is just not an event that is happening in isolation. It is actually a systemic, having a systemic impact, and health is in the center of all of this. And there are a lot of Indian working force which are impacted by it because most of them are working outdoors. So the question that we were asking through this research was that our urban heat action plans within India are actually transforming the cities, are actually helping them to adapt to extreme heat, or we are just firefighting for just the season. So to answer that, we took a very simple framework to understand how HAPs are addressing differential vulnerability, prioritizing adaptation actions, and and how they are governing the heat response actions. And we tried to define the approaches in three different categories: being incremental, that they're maintaining the status quo throughout the summer season; or reformist, they have identified certain problematic situations or challenges within the system and they are changing that; or they are actually moving towards transforming long-term systematic changes that are helping them to overcome the vulnerability that the city population is in. We basically took up the approach of having a text-based review of those 10 heat action plans. We had 25 KIs interviews across NGOs, different government bodies, and the technical advisory institutes that were involved in heat action plans. AIDMI was one of them that we interviewed. Basically, it was to understand the depth and direction of their heat strategies and how they went about it, what were their learnings after actually implementing the heat action plans. The first major challenge that was to understand the heat governance across these all different heat action plans. The municipal commissioner was the key person who was at the top of this governance structure. And we know that within the urban system, already the local bodies are under stress to providing the basic infra. At the same point, they were giving the staffs to employ these heat actions, although we know most of them actually overlap with their day-to-day work. But still, it was extra effort for them in those, particularly in those seasons. Suddenly, February, everybody would wake up and would want to get ready for the upcoming heat season. There were inconsistent NGO involvement. There were certain NGOs already working and doing something on their own, but the involvement with the government was like really missing the connectivity, and things would have been better. The actions that the NGOs were taking would have had a better impact if the government and the NGOs would have been working together, and there would have been a platform like this where actually they get to know about different efforts that are happening. Obviously, the lack of funding was a major challenge for these urban local bodies to actually employ these solutions. And having a platform where the different departments, as you can see, there are like 8-10 different departments given different responsibilities under HAPs, but there was no platform where they can actually come together, talk about it, and how we have to go about it on a day-to-day basis. So mostly the focus from the governance point of view was to avoid any deaths or illnesses rather than understanding the actual socioeconomic and impact on the vulnerable population that are exposed. Moving on to the newer HAPs were going beyond actions and actually trying to incorporate these hazard assessments and vulnerability assessments. And mostly the hazard assessment were focused on daytime peak temperatures. Now we see like Patna is coming, like after the study, now we are seeing that Patna is coming out with these extreme temperature. They are taking that as a variable to do the hazard assessment, which is really a progress. But whatever we have seen so far, the nighttime temperature, humidity, or the longer duration of heat waves were really missed out. These indicators are really important to understand the impact of the hazard. Then the vulnerability part of it the vulnerability assessment was really a big gap because it was done in silos. We know the real vulnerability lies within the system, and we need to understand the vulnerability. We need to move this understanding of vulnerability to sensitivity in order to understand the occupational economic pressure that workers are in during these heat wave events. And moving to the actions point of view, they were mostly quick fixes. There are not much structural solutions that were in place. Next, in this slide, you will be able to see this better, that how most of the solutions within the heat action plans were focused on incremental and reformist. There were some who were towards the transformative side, like actually there were some solutions around revising the labor codes or amending the building codes in order to prepare for the coming heat, and later, like 5-10 years later, to be better. And we actually know that heat is not just a weather issue, it's actually a development issue. So a lot of development the idea and approach around how we develop the cities has to change if we want to tackle heat. In order to close the things from this research that we did, we still feel that the heat risk management within India is still too reactive. We really need to shift our gears and move to updating these hazard assessments and vulnerability assessments, where we need more depth. And the governance gaps are the major ones that are restricting us to actually act properly and have a proactive, systemic, inclusive adaptation strategies to be in place. I have few anecdotes from the field. This photo is one of them, how the cooling solutions are still in the hands of residents to be taken care of, and how the market is actually focusing on that. I have few more anecdotes around field work from Kochi and Bangalore. There are team is involved in how people are adapting in small ways, sleeping outside, washing floors, or putting cow dung on the floor and the wall to keep themselves cool, shifting jobs. And specifically with all these events, women are the one who are taking extra responsibility to do this and take care of their households and the family, and their caregiving work is actually increasing in these events specifically. Some early impressions that we have: the fieldwork in Gulbarga, Kalaburgi, also known as Gulbarga. It's the hottest district, most like one of the hottest district in North Karnataka and the South India region itself, which is facing dry heat. And the idea about this study is mostly around heat impact that is happening on health, and how to get more evidence out from the people who are actually exposed to it, the outdoor workers, the rag pickers, the fruit vendors, and all of that. And actually, certain issues of very basic infrastructure like water access, sanitation, are the issues that people are reporting that is actually exposing them to be more vulnerable to heat. Yeah, and to sum up, I think it's very like what I said, that we are still at a reactive stage, but actually the response is growing, and now it needs to evolve. We must integrate our actions and focus on most just and forward-looking approaches, and move beyond these stopgap measures that are there. And yeah, heat wave is a more of a development issue rather than a weather issue. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Divyanshi ji, for sharing insights from India's heat action plans, especially in cities. Your insights and findings on performance of city level heat action plans, especially how governance part of it could be improved, is extremely useful for everyone to know. And also, thank you for highlighting the fact that weak governance and governance gaps, along with structural inequalities, can worsen heat vulnerabilities, especially for the poor and marginalized groups. So that's the key message that we are taking from your presentation. I request participants to post their questions in the chat box. Now I would like to invite our third speaker, Mr. Chirayu Brahmbhatt, Development Associate, Mahila Housing Trust, Gujarat, India. And he will be presenting on climate risk insurance, what has actually worked. And Chirayu Bhai has worked as a development associate at Mahila Housing Trust, a grassroots social technical organization, and his professional interest includes financial inclusion, participatory governance, and climate change. And over the past 3 years at Mahila Housing Trust, Chirayu Bhai has worked on diverse projects that explore intersection of these critical issues. Uh, so I invite Chirayu bhai, welcome. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. So, my name is Chirayu and I work as a development associate at Mahila Housing Trust. And today I'll be presenting on a small topic, and my topic is climate risk insurance, what really worked for Mahila Housing Trust. So, before jumping onto the topic, I would briefly describe about the organization that I work in. Mahila Housing Trust is a grassroots socio-technical organization that primarily works with uh, poor and low-income women in the informal sector. Our mission is to strengthen the collectives of such grassroots women and provide them with requisite skills and knowledge so that they can advance dialogue and constructive action in order to improve their habitat and living conditions. Over the past 2 decades of you know being present, Mahila Housing Trust has started working in several states, and we cover uh, various themes. But talking about our climate change journey, so our work on climate change began in 2010 when many of the community members from the meetings that we have periodically, say monthly, started raising issues related to climate change pertaining to excess heat and excess rain. Uh, in the initial years, we weren't really sure if this impacts really had a huge bearing on such women. But close to 2012, we understood that yes, women had a major impact due to such stresses. And we primarily worked on two stresses in the initial years, that was excess heat and excess rain. Our work was recognized in 2015 by the Global Resilience Partnership, and we were basically awarded a grant that really helped us to expand our work not only geographically but also in terms of the depth of our work. In 2020, we started working on something known as an excess heat risk insurance policy. And this policy was basically a culmination of the gaps that we identified in terms of the work that we were doing on climate change. In 2022, several other partners joined to make this policy, a reality. And the first policy was launched in 2024. So this is just a brief slide that summarizes our work on climate change. So over the past 2 decades, apart from excess heat and water scarcity, we have also started working on two other stresses, that is flooding and inundation, and water and vector-borne diseases. We currently work in 7 different cities and 3 countries with the help of our partners, and we have trained close to 5,000 women leaders on climate change. So talking about the approach that MHT has on climate change. So we believe that the community that we work with is highly vulnerable in terms of dealing with the impacts of climate change, and a multi-pronged approach is very much needed in order to make them more climate resilient. So it has basically 4 pillars. So the first part of the pillar is training and education. uh, what we have experienced from all the communication, all the meetings that we have with our women members is that many of the women members still consider climate change as an act of God. They feel that climate change is only done by God, and they see themselves as unable to deal with the impacts of such events where they have substantial financial losses. So, in order to solve these issues, we started training and educating women on climate change, and we try to help them to understand the science of climate change and try to demystify certain scientific aspects and make it more easy for them so that they can relate as to what steps can be taken in order to make them more resilient towards climate change. The trainings are then followed by something known as a tech pilot. So what we do is we start implementing tech pilots in the areas that we work with. And we see these tech pilots as some sort of a lived experience or some sort of a practical experience that women see. And these are really important because women need to understand that though they are poor, though they are low income, they still have tools to make them more climate resilient. A very classic example of our work is that in many cities that we work with, excess heat is one of the major problems. And we have actually in support with the women members launched a tech pilot known as solar reflective white paints. It was launched close to 5 to 6 years back, and now we have close to 10,000 cooling roofs across 3 to 4 different cities. And this is where a cooling paint or a cooling roof serves as a lived experience, and women themselves see that yes, they can do something in order to become more climate resilient. So the third part is designing and incubating such financial products. So when we launch a particular tech product, we have also understood that women don't really have, necessarily they don't have the finance to, implement such a product. So in order to have such finance available, we partner with various other organizations, various financial institutions, various partner organizations who are willing to do so. And once such a need is established and such a tech pilot is done in a particular area, we see the need and we scale it up to other areas as well, of course suiting to the local and hyper local conditions of each and every other geography. And lastly, we believe that it is very important that the women themselves are able to talk about climate change and the issues that they face due to climate change to relevant stakeholders in the entire ecosystem, be it the government, be it other NGOs, be it other civil society organizations. So we try to provide them with a platform and the requisite know-how as to what they should do and talk about, so that they can advance dialogue and constructive action to make them more climate resilient. Now, coming to the climate risk insurance product itself. So the climate risk insurance product that we formulated and ideated was basically, we started ideating this product in 2021. And the need for such a product was that even though we worked with women on, with such depth on climate change, one of the major issues that women, always addressed in the meetings was that whenever such an excess heat wave event or an excess rain event occurs, we face certain financial loss, either in terms of income loss and in terms of greater expenditure towards dealing with such stresses. So what can be done? So in order to solve the residual risk that they face, the risk that we are not able to cater to with our strategy, we started developing an insurance policy. And in 2022, there were other partners who came on board who had the same philosophy. They were Global Parametrics from UK and Howden India. And then there was a local insurer called GoDigit who helped us to make this idea a reality. While ideating the entire heat risk insurance policy, we worked on various types of insurance policies as to what can be done. Should it be a normal medical insurance policy specifically suited for our women members? Should it be a general insurance policy, or should it be a parametric insurance policy? We ultimately zeroed in on a parametric insurance. And a parametric insurance is basically a non-traditional form of insurance, where payouts to the members are, predetermined based on a certain trigger event. Now, since it is an excess heat risk insurance policy, our payout was based on the temperature thresholds wherever the policy was rolled out. Now, coming to the features and impact of the policy. So this particular heat risk insurance policy was rolled out in the 3 cities of Gujarat. They were Ahmedabad, Baroda, and Surat. A total of 26,000 women members were made the policy holders, and we had a layered approach in the product. So the layered approach was necessary because we had 2 temperature thresholds in each city. I'll just explain this by an example. We had a lower temperature threshold. For example, Ahmedabad had a lower temperature threshold of 40 degrees Celsius, where the women would receive 100 rupees as a payout. And the second case, there was a higher temperature threshold of 42 degrees, and there they got a higher payout of 300 rupees. These are just suggestive figures, but why I'm saying this is that the layered approach product helped us to balance between the insurer and the women members, because the local insurer always wants the product to be a for-profit product, and on the other hand, we work for the women, so we wanted to have some sort of a balance where the insurer thinks that they at least have some sort of a safety in terms of a higher threshold, and also women get some sort of a payout in terms of a lower threshold. Yeah. So coming to the insurance product. So before rolling out the insurance product, MHT actually conducted an affordability study. This affordability study was basically a compilation of focus group discussions and key personal interviews across the 3 cities. And we had a sample size of close to 300 people. And with the use of this affordability study, we wanted to understand what was the actual impact that the women were facing. What was their attitude towards insurance? Did they really understand what insurance as a product is? What were the other types of product available in the market? And the conclusion of the FGD is in this one slide. Here we see that across the three cities, health and housing, had a major impact. It was so across the 300 respondents, 89% respondents in Ahmedabad said they had some sort of a bearing on their health due to excess heat, while 40% said they had some sort of a bearing on the housing utility in terms of the expenditure on the electricity bills. In Baroda, again, it was health and housing utility, and in Surat, it was food and water. So they said that the expenditure on food and water would increase during the summer season, and again, it was housing utility. And so now coming to what really worked. So going back to the approach that I talked about. Going back to the approach that I talked on the climate change. First, we did the FGDs and KPIs to understand what was the impact of climate change on these women and how we could solve it. In the second part, once we understood what was the impact and once we had some sort of a product in place, we started educating women on how the product would work and how climate change would really impact their lives, and how such a policy would really shield them from such impacts. In order to make it a lived experience, we also did some tech pilots so that women understand that this policy is coupled with a form of a tech pilot, and this helps in ensuring that there is a greater level of climate resilience. And lastly, there was a rollout in 2024. So in this slide, it basically summarizes what we've done. So if you see the photo on your left, I feel this is the training on the heat insurance product. And what we did was we specially developed a game known as Good Luck. And this game was developed in conjunction with other partner. This game basically helps women understand that whenever an excess heat wave or an excess rain event occurs, how can such a climate risk insurance policy shield them from such events? In the second part, you see that there were certain solar panels involved, and financing was done through other partners such as credit cooperatives. And in the last, we see the product rollout via meetings and IDRs. So although we have rolled out the product in 2024 and it was a short-term policy, and we had our first success in the pilot year itself, where close to 2,000 members received a payout of approximately 15 lakh rupees, that is close to 15,000 USD. There were certain challenges that occurred during the entire implementation phase. One is that the local regulations always require a local insurer to be on board to issue such a policy. And the problems with local insurer or any for-profit entity is that they always want the product to be profitable. But in our case, since we are working with poor women or women from the low-income segment, we have to strike a balance, and finding correct partners all the time is hard. Secondly, in many cases, if there is a reinsurer, which in our case there was the NDF, many parts of the policy are still dictated by the reinsurer because they have their own priorities. In this case, even though we want an ideal product, it might not be available all the time. Third is data validation for modeling and forecast. So since we were rolling out this product in India, we wanted to have the data for the technical index from the local agency, which is the Indian Meteorological Department. But we understood that IMD cannot really give such a detailed data for the past 50 years to create a technical index. And if they can provide, it comes with a substantial cost, which not all organizations or all companies can bear. And since we are already trying to make a balance between, an insurance product for women, for poor women, and a balance and against a for-profit entity, sometimes the cost aspects make it really hard. And ultimately, when the policy was triggered, our idea was that since it is a parametric insurance, there will be no confusion regarding the payout, and the women would receive the payout directly into their bank accounts in 2 to 3 days. But the problem was the payout actually took 2 weeks. So we are trying to solve such issues in the next year, and actually in 2025 we are actually going to roll out the product 2 days, I think, in the next 2 days. And we have taken care of certain aspects, but still certain aspects are yet to be solved. Yeah, thank you.
So much, Chirayu bhai. You have highlighted that women are differently and affected more by extreme heat challenges. And it was great to know about the parametric extreme heat insurance that you are piloting with great success, various parts of Gujarat. We have got really interesting questions. Uh, the first question that we have received is about home-based cooling strategies that people are using in the field. So, may I request Preda ji to respond based on your research and review of documents, the solutions that you have observed in the field that people are using or employing at their home level?
Hello, Meherji. Just so I answer the exact question, can you repeat the
Yes.
first few lines?
Yeah. Somebody is asking that, about home-based cooling strategies that people are using in the field. So
Yes.
some of the observation that you have captured.
Yes, we have identified many solutions across Asia, Africa, many in Africa, and some in Latin America, where individuals are adopting these creative cooling solutions at home on preserving their food when there is no electricity, or there is an electricity outrage, or they just don't have access to it through earthen clay pots that are embedded within the ground that increases the storage capacity of their foods. They have also just an evidence that they have also adapted this. This was an old indigenous strategy that they had used, but with climate change, they further found challenges with pest infestation in those clay pots, to which they, instead of eradicating that indigenous local community solution at an individual level, they adapted to it with having a metal surface embedded inside it, but still retaining the original solution that many community individuals are familiar with. And it's much easier to adapt than to bring an engineering solution from outside. There are many behavioral changes that are now coming up as key individual solutions, like changing your diet, moving towards more food and nutrition that help your body manage heat, especially manage the wet bulb temperature heat, the heat with more humidity. And many people have started documenting these behavioral and dietary changes that communities can evolve, and how can we make that more accessible, that it's not all organic and costly food, but also food products that are available to to the poor population, to the ones who do not have a lot of financial uh, sources. It can we look at indigenous local food systems that help manage heat impacts. So many of these traditional solutions that I think some of them I had seen in my villages back in when I was a child. They are now surfacing as solutions that are being shared, even in urban contexts, like using bamboo. What do you call them? Curtains, like bamboo curtains, and having ventilation in your infrastructure if you're building new houses. So there are many of these. Some of them at the very nascent stage, as in the description of it is not as academic or as rich to share as a heat adaptation solution, which is where I think we can come in and fill that with evidence and with more information. But the core concept of it is already there with many individuals who have figured adaptations around it. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Prerna ji. There are quite a few questions on city level heat action plans, and I have chosen 2 questions out of that 4 to 5 questions that are raised. And I would like Ms. Devyani Vyas to respond. So the first question is that, do the heat wave action plans have an evacuation plan and contingency plan for at-the-risk communities? And do heat action plans have the detailing around risks and solutions faced by children? Basically, participants are asking that, how detailed are these heat action plans are really? You are mute. Divyanshi?
Yeah,
Yes.
am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would like to answer the first question first, because there's not much around it actually. I have not seen, at least at the city level action plans, there were no evacuation or contingency plans as such. There are few state level heat action plans like Andhra and Karnataka where there are contingency plans around drinking water supply if that gets affected and how it would be tackled at the state level. And that was all about it. Basically, that is what I have seen so far. Around children, basically, most of the heat action plans do identify them as one of the vulnerable population, how they have defined it. So they are considered to be one of the most exposed and vulnerable. And the kind of solutions that you see are very generic and actually are getting employed way before heat action plans came into picture, like shutting down the schools early in April and then opening it later. We have also now seen after COVID a lot of online classes happening during the season where children are not, so that they don't get exposed to such weather patterns and everything. So that is, I think, all that I have seen around children. There might be much more, but probably that's now what we have focused on. So maybe that is a good question for me to go look into from that perspective, actually. Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Divyanshi, for clarification. We have two more questions, and these questions are about the parametric heat insurance, which is being floated by the Mahila Housing Trust. So, Chirayu bhai, two questions for you. A participant is asking, can you please share who is underwriting these extreme heat insurance products, and is it designed only for at-risk communities? So that is the first question. And the second question is, were you able to detect greater financial resilience among women's families because of the insurance that you are
Yeah.
providing? Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk about the insurance product that we rolled out. In our case, there were various partners, and it began with a reinsurance partner. Then there was the insurer. Then there was a technical index creator. In our case, the reinsurer was the National Disaster Fund, which is, I think, based out of United Kingdom, and they were the ones who are ultimately underwriting the product. And Global Parametrics was the one who was taking the was actually creating a technical index for the product. We always need to, since we are trying to roll out a product in our country or in any other country, you have to abide by the local laws, and we had a local insurer that was Go Digit. So I think that answers the first question. In terms of the second question, as to did we witness any sort of a climate resilience, so what we were thinking is that we tried to create a balance where we would have the temperature thresholds in a way that women will get some sort of a relief in terms of the payouts. In the pilot year, we didn't think that a payout would occur, because we are still trying to understand how things work on the ground and how women would react to such a policy. But I think close to 2,000 members received the payout in the first year, and so I think they had paid a premium of around 350 rupees, and the payout was close to 750 rupees. That was double of what they paid. In some cases, women didn't really feel any sort of a loss due to excess heat, but in many cases, I think, and we have also documented that. I think there was a case where a woman had to basically hospitalize her husband, who was facing dehydration, and he had to go to the local clinic because they can't really afford hospitals. And I think she made the payout from the 750 rupees. I think there was a cost of 500 rupees for I think a glucose bottle, and the payout was made from that 750 rupees that she received. So yes, we have certain cases we can't map because the scale is so large. Talking about 2,000 members, but I think we have mapped around 10 to 20 cases where there was a certain impact, and the payout actually made them more resilient. Yes.
Thank you so much for the response, Chirayu bhai. In fact, we have more questions, but we cannot take more questions now in the interest of time. And but we'll share these questions with the respective speakers, and we'll ask them to respond to respective participants. And as we do, In the end, as we do always, we invite Mr. Mihirar Bhatt, our director, to share his insights and thoughts on way forward. Mihir bhai, over to you.
Thank you, everybody. What a pleasure to listen to the three excellent presentations about concrete work and something which we urgently need to harness the knowledge, but also put that into action. So very timely, perhaps a bit less timely. We should have done this a month ago, but that's where we are. In terms of any questions, any of the participants you have, please put it on the chat, or you could write to us subsequently, and we'll make sure that your questions are addressed. So least be worried about being left out and not getting the answers. I've been asked to look at to listen to the three excellent presentations and say what is the way ahead. And I just thought that way ahead for whom? So three possible targets I've decided. One is that a lot of this is sort of global because an extreme heat is global, and therefore it's the way ahead for global agencies. It can be UNOCHA, UNDRR, etc. The second target I thought is the national governments. And so what's the way ahead for national governments from these presentations and the publication which was launched. And third is from the subnational, both authorities and civil society organizations such as Chirayubai represents. So keeping those three audiences in mind, I have taken notes to suggest the way ahead. And as I'm speaking, I'm thinking that maybe we'll also write it up and actually send it to these three audiences for them to make good use of it. The first way ahead, which seems very clear, is network learning mechanisms around extreme heat. Both documents, tracks, reflects on extreme heat adaptation efforts, but also embed learning loops into existing systems, may it be government programs, NGO initiatives, research institutions, but definitely network learning mechanism around extreme heat is something which I very clearly draw from Prerna Singh's presentation. And she made it a regional presentation. So obviously this is something at a regional level. Organizations such as ADRRN who are here, I'm so glad, such as Duryog Nivaran, who I'm sure is here, but many other organizations who are working on networks who are working here. So that is something that needs to be picked up. If they are doing it, if they are not doing it, find resources to do that. But that's one. The second way ahead very clearly, which is coming out from all three, but perhaps predominantly from Divyanshi Vyas, your presentation, and which was very national focused on the national effort. But it is about, I think the way ahead is to enable decentralized knowledge sharing where adaptation actions are taken. So what are the adaptation actions that are being taken? And so basically support local and urban and subnational actors such as municipalities, state governments, community-based organizations to share their experience and innovations for actual use and encourage peer-to-peer exchange across cities and region. There is no reason why what Chirayu has presented here should not be useful to somebody in Bangladesh or Northern India or Southern India in any other city. And similarly, what Divyanshi has presented here in terms of review of action plans, heat action plans, why shouldn't be easily available to somebody else working in Bangladesh or in Australia for that matter. So I think that's the second point about way ahead. The third point about way ahead is prioritize extreme heat data, equity, and access for affected people. So a lot of data is now coming out around extreme heat related, insurance related, adaptation related, mitigation is also slowly coming up. So how equally that's available to people who are taking decisions, and also do affected people themselves have access to this. And that's something which is very much needs to be done in terms of how timely such data is, how localized it is, how disaggregated it is. I was asking, did women were consulted for insurance premium? That's exactly where this data will tell us. and empower frontline communities to access, generate, and interpret data relevant to them. So that's a third area, and that I'm drawing from Chirayu, your presentation predominantly. The fourth, and we have 5, so 2 more. The fourth is leverage multi-stakeholder collaboration with leadership of affected people. So Prerna Singh, what you were saying about foster networks of researchers, practitioners, and policymakers to co-create adaptation solutions. And a lot of solutions needs to be worked out, and how do we collectively create them faster than the need for solutions come. So right now the problems are moving faster, solutions are slower. So how do you make up that gap so that we actually have a menu of solutions to choose from, then not just take the first solution and rush to that. So that's the leverage multi-stakeholder collaboration for leadership of affected people. Also within that is to recognize and include non-traditional knowledge holders, like informal workers, which Chirayu so clearly mentioned, but many others, youth, for example, indigenous people, for example. Prerna, you were talking about your village, that, for example. So, how do we make that very easily available for those who are affected? And the fifth and final, there's a longer list for my notes, but I'll stop there, which seems is through enhanced financing to learning and adaptation both. It seems that, first of all, there is very little financing. Whatever financing is there is receding, and it's focusing on adaptation, but not as much on learning for adaptation. So how do you enhance financing for learning and adaptation both? To advocate for climate finance mechanisms that support continuous learning, experimentation, and adaptation scaling. And second is to use tracked evidence to inform funding, both for policy decisions, but also for performance. So these are the 5 areas I thought perhaps further work would be done. Anybody who is interested is more than welcome to take it further. We would be taking this further as well. So anybody interested in joining this, please feel free to send an email to us. We'll be very happy to do that. And as I said, we'll put together a small report based on this, basically for the global actors. What is it that they can use from what we have discussed? For the national authorities, what is it that they can use? And for the state authorities or subnational authorities, what is it that they can use from the experience of Chirayu and Divyanshu and Prerna? Yeah, that sort of seems from today's discussion a very good way to go ahead. Any other suggestions that you may have as panel members, please write to us. As participants, please write to us. As you know very much, this is not something which is AIDMI's. This is very much yours. Always the request has come from the participants or panel members. So should you have any other suggestions about future themes, topics, future publications, just write to us and we'll see our best to make it happen. There are 3 more similar events and publications around extreme heat are coming up. One is around urban, and we'll be very soon informing all of you around that. The other one is very much around planning. And Divyanshu, this is picking up from your work, but many others recent reviews that have come up. And it seems that we don't plan properly for performance. We sort of plan for planning. And so how do you plan for performance? And that's something around extreme heat that's coming up. And we want to see that both at a regional level, but also very much Chirayu at a local level, that how people themselves are able to plan for performance, but we stop them and we say that we will make plans, and then we make plans which can't perform or do not perform. So thank you very much. Back to you, Mehul Bhai, and thank you, the panel members. It's such a pleasure to learn from you. Very special for me and all the participants.
Thank you so much, Mir Bhai. And on behalf of the Transitions Research and AIDMI, I would like to again thank all the participants for showing the interest, asking questions, and staying till the end. I would also like to thank Prerna ji, Divyanshi ji, Chirayu Bhai for your insightful presentations. And in the end, I would again like to thank Mir Bhai for summarizing the roundtable. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.